Okay, welcome back. So we have some questions tonight. We haven't received questions yet from those watching online, but if you have a question, please submit it in the chat today, and we will try to address it tomorrow evening. Those of you here, of course, we're available all the time for asking questions, and we will have interviews again tomorrow. So the first question, what is that circular walk structure? It's beautiful. So up a little bit up the hill from here, there's a stone wall, and on the top of that wall is a flat surface on which is painted a labyrinth. So that surface, Jess tells me, was used to grind grain, like pounding, like threshing grain to separate the wheat from the chaff. So when the retreat center started, it was repurposed as a labyrinth. And a labyrinth is a pattern of a path that you walk towards a center. So it is a meditative practice to walk the labyrinth. We find this in a number of traditions, and there are many practices that you can do. But basically, the kind of idea of a labyrinth is you thread this path that's quite unpredictable and winding until you actually come to the center. And it's kind of a metaphor for the spiritual journey where we really get in touch with our deepest, most authentic self. And then once you've reached the center and sort of felt that deep presence within, then you wind your way back out into the world and bring what you found in the center out into the world. So it's a beautiful thing to walk the labyrinth. And that's what that circular diagram, that circular diagram is about. Okay, so we have a really beautiful set of questions posed. It kind of relates to the labyrinth a little bit. The path is made by walking. In other words, by living our lives. It is never too late to change course and choose love over fear. What to take then in the backpack, I guess our backpack of life? And what burdens to release? What weighs us down after all? What do we want to embrace? What is truly important? What makes us shine? Well, I couldn't have written a better introduction to the talk I'm planning to give tonight. And I want to start with this question, what to take in the backpack? Because that's the theme of the talk. The title is Presence, Kindness, Curiosity. Presence, kindness, curiosity. So just take a moment to let those words resonate inside. See what feelings, what thoughts they bring up. Presence, kindness, curiosity. In a way, they seem very different from one another. But I hope you'll see by the end of the talk tonight how beautifully these three work together. These three really permeate everything that we do. They're, in a way, the foundation of our being. We carry them with us always. And because they're always with us, they're always available to help us if we just remember. And the good news is that each of these three is an entry point into the joy of living levels. Now, I know not everyone listening online or in person has done the joy of living or any part of that. So part of what we're going to talk about tonight is that program, because that program is all about presence and kindness and curiosity. And we'll sort of go through them one at a time, sort of looking at each level of the joy of living program, each of the three levels, and how they feed into one another and how they mutually support one another, and therefore how they can support us in our practice and on retreat. So typically, we approach these three characteristics, these three dimensions of our spiritual life with three different methods. Jess referred to these the other day. One is the view, where we have to come to an understanding of what this principle, this characteristic is about. How does it function in our lives? What does it mean? How can it benefit us? Then there's meditation, where we get to know that quality in the laboratory of our own mind and heart, where we really practice with it. And let me say a word about practice in the joy of living. The beautiful thing about meditation in the joy of living program is we're never fabricating anything. We're never creating something that wasn't there before. We're not trying to change who we are. We're actually recognizing what's already there. So we don't have to be different than we already are. We just have to recognize what's inside. So the meditations we do are all about cultivating, nourishing, and getting to know the characteristics that are already present within us that we may just have overlooked, or we may not know how to bring forth in our lives in a skillful way. So with meditation, we begin to get to know these qualities. And with the third aspect, application, we then bring them out into our lives. So one of the things I love most about the Joy of Living program is it's not just about going to talks and meditating on a cushion. It's about bringing everything we experience into the flow of life, into our jobs, into our relationships, into the way we relate to and talk to ourselves, into how we relate to the world and nature. And that's what we call application, where we're taking the view, we're taking everything we experience in meditation and learning to tap into it, to access it as we live our lives, as we have challenging conversations, as we talk with our friends and family, as we negotiate projects at work, that we are able to bring these principles and practices into the flow of our lives. So we don't have to become monks or nuns to get the value out of this program. The beauty is we can live very busy lives in the world and be richly, it's sort of called the hidden yogi path, where we're really yogis, we're really meditators, but nobody might ever know that about us. They just think we're great people. Of course, we're all somebody's difficult person. That's not to say that we don't have things to work on. Okay, so let's talk about presence. And I want you to just think for a moment about a friend, a family member, even a pet, who is really present for you. When you get together with that person, you know they're with you. They're not thinking about what they're going to say when you're talking. They're listening to what you're saying while you're talking, and then they reflect on what they might want to say. Or maybe they'll just take it in and sit in silence and just be with you, letting whatever you've said resonate. I don't know about you, but when there's somebody in my life that's really present with me, it just feels so different. There's a sense of a nourishment in that relationship, a sense of support that's present, that's not there otherwise. So I thought about some qualities of presence. There's a sense of intentionality. When we're really present, we're intending to be present. It's something that we're doing actively, even if we're listening and very receptive. There's an intention to listen, to be present. The next thing is there's a knowing quality. We know what's going on. We're open to what's happening in another person. If we're present to ourselves, we're really present to the thoughts, feelings, what's going on in our bodies and minds. And these two things, intention and knowingness, well, guess what they embody? Awareness. I would say presence is our way of embodying awareness in our lives. So awareness is the knowing quality of the mind. And in our lives, we often overlook awareness. Actually, awareness for the neuroscientists is still an incredible mystery. They know a lot about what the brain, what's happening in the brain that is going on when we're aware of something. So they can see certain things in the brain with the scanners that they have that say, oh, this phenomenon in the brain is related to that person being aware. But they don't have a clue yet as to how that happens. How does all this electrical activity and neurons firing and chemical reactions, how does that result in the taste of a strawberry, or seeing love in the face of a friend? Nobody can explain that, how awareness arises out of the nervous system. Or does it arise out of the nervous system? Does the nervous system arise out of awareness? I don't have the answer to these questions. All I know is that awareness is one of the great overlooked powerhouses of life. That most of the time, people live their lives never recognizing awareness itself. We're very focused on the outer world, people, places, things we need to do, people we need to meet. But recognizing the awareness in which all that takes place, it's almost like if you have sand, wet sand. You can't see the water in the sand. But if you put the sand in a funnel and put the funnel on top of a glass, after a while, the glass will fill up with water because the water has drained out of the sand. And this is what meditation does for us. We begin to recognize awareness, the space in which our lives unfold. And we begin to recognize that awareness has an incredible power. Awareness is a space of choice. It's a space of freedom. It's a space of wisdom. It's a space of love. Jess mentioned to me on our first day here how one of the key insights of level 2 this time was awareness is love. So let me just let that settle for a moment. We'll talk about it a little more in a few minutes. So when we meditate in Joy of Living level 1, which is called calming the mind, we reverse our normal way of relating to the world. Awareness we don't see, we're very focused on what's going on, maybe thoughts and feelings coming up, all of these objects that arise within awareness. But with meditative awareness, we're using all of those objects, all of those experiences to help us recognize awareness. So if I hear a sound, we've had wonderful swallows flying around our meditation hall all day. You hear that sound. If I know that I'm hearing the sound, as opposed to just hearing the sound, oh, there's a swallow out there. I know I'm hearing the swallow sing. That knowing quality is awareness. And the song of the swallow, meditation is using to help me recognize awareness. So meditative awareness is different from our ordinary awareness in that we're using all of the senses, our thoughts, emotions, body sensations, movements to support our recognition of awareness itself. And what this does for us in the flow of our lives is deepen our sense of presence, our sense of being with ourselves, our ability to be with other people, our ability to really show up for our lives. How much of our lives do we live distracted, in the past, in the future, not showing up? It's heartbreaking. There's actually a really important research study done with thousands of people all over the world that established that our minds are wandering almost 50% of our waking life. 47% of our waking life was the figure in this study, that people's minds were wandering on average during a normal day. We're in the past with regret. We're in the future with anxiety. We're much happier when we're in the present. And that was another thing this research study established. We're happier, even if what's going on is nothing special. We're happier when we're just present. And that's the gift of Joy of Living Level 1, cultivating awareness, the recognition of awareness. So the next word we're talking about tonight is kindness. Kindness. And that takes us into Joy of Living Level 2. I worked in a hospital for many years. I was the research director, so I was training physicians in how to do research, how to apply research to their patient care. And I had the good fortune to teach meditation in the last 10 years that I worked in that hospital system. Actually, 14 years. So I've taught hundreds and hundreds of health professionals. And I encountered a book called The Primacy of Caring. The Primacy of Caring. Primacy means it's the first thing. And it was a book written by a nurse for healthcare professionals. And the thesis of this book was that as a doctor or a nurse, you couldn't give good health care if you didn't care about your patients. Because caring opened the door to understanding. You actually couldn't understand your patient's problem, even if it was a physical problem, if you didn't care about them. Caring helped you understand who they are, their lifestyle, and the way they think. You can't explain anything to them unless you know how they're thinking, how they're living their lives, how they can take the information you're giving them as a doctor or nurse and applying it in their life. And it's only caring that opens the door. Now, this is so true for all of us. It's not just true for doctors and nurses. Kindness, and I'm taking caring as a synonym for kindness. Kindness and caring help us understand ourselves and help us understand others. Without caring, people are opaque. We don't know what's going on inside of them. And the doorway to understanding others is understanding ourselves. So we talk about love and compassion. And I would say those are two dimensions of caring. When you care about somebody, you want them to be happy. You want them to be flourishing. You want them to do well. And when we get in touch with our own wish for happiness, then we can really begin to see that that same wish is present in everybody else. And when we perceive that wish in everybody else, suddenly we begin to understand what they do and what they think on a much deeper level. Everybody comes out of a different family, a different cultural situation, different education. They think differently than each of us does. But they all have that wish for happiness, whatever form that might take. And that's love. By getting in touch with that wish for ourselves, that builds the bridge into understanding others and caring for others. Likewise, we want to be free from suffering. And the wish to alleviate suffering is what we call compassion. The more we understand our own wish to be free from suffering, the more deeply we can understand the wish on the part of others to be free from suffering. So kindness is expressed through love, it's expressed through compassion. And those two build bridges of understanding between us. So if we can recognize these in ourselves through awareness, then the way we live in the world is transformed. So this is what I mean when I say awareness is love. Because all we have to do is look inside, be aware of what's inside of us, of what's motivating our actions, our thoughts, our emotions. As we become aware of that, we recognize it's love. It's compassion. They're arising in awareness with awareness. Minya Rinpoche says they're one thing. They're not separate. It's like a candle flame has light and it has heat, it has color. Those three things are separate in words, but they're not separate in the candle flame, right? So awareness, love, compassion, one thing within us. So the good news about love and compassion, they're like a compass. We don't want to suffer. We want to be happy in whatever way is meaningful to us. So we're looking around trying to figure out how can I live life in a way that creates true and lasting happiness, true and complete freedom from suffering. How can I live in such a way? Well, guess what that is? That's curiosity. So curiosity arises right out of awareness, love, and compassion. So as we begin to meditate, we begin to recognize that how we relate to our own mind, our own heart, makes a big difference in whether we lead a happier life or not. When an emotion arises in the space of awareness, we begin to have a freedom of choice. We begin to be able to take the emotion as information. A thought arises, an emotion arises. Often, before we begin to meditate, they're our boss. They're guiding us around. Everything we think and feel is just controlling us like a puppet. But when we begin to meditate and we begin to recognize the spaciousness of awareness, then with love and compassion and curiosity, thoughts and emotions arise. They're just information. We have choice. So these dimensions of our being enhance our freedom of choice, our ability to respond to life as opposed to react. Does that make sense to everybody, the difference between responding versus reacting? Reacting is like, the knee-jerk, it just happens. You get the upsetting email and you just write an angry email back and press send and there you go. Well, that's reacting. I have done that. And then I regret it. And if I bring awareness, curiosity, love, and compassion to my regret, the next time an email comes through and I get angry, I'm not going to push send so quickly. I'm going to bring the thought and the emotion, the email into meditative awareness, in the flow of life. See what arises with curiosity. What was the person thinking who sent me this email? Do I really understand what they had in mind? Do I know what their perspective is? Maybe I just need to ask a question. Help me understand what you meant by this. Oh, that's what you meant. Huh. I can't tell you how many times my anger just dissolved when I said, what did you mean by that? And then I was like, oh, okay. And emails, text, social media, very hard to read the tone, the emotional tone, right? So the wisdom that comes from meditative awareness can really help us in navigating this world. Let's see here. Okay, we're almost out of time. I want to talk in the last few minutes about how all of this informs our practice. So I mentioned the good news that we have all of these present within us all the time if we just recognize them. So let me give you an example. And I'm going to, the principles in this example work in the flow of life, when emotions are arising in relationships or at work. They also work during meditation when emotions arise. And the example I'm going to give is in meditation. So let's say you're meditating and you remember something and anger arises. Okay. Joy of living level 1, I'm aware of the anger. So it's not behind me, controlling me. I'm aware that anger is present. There's space around it. I'm on the bank of the river. Anger's in the river flowing by. I'm aware of it, but I'm not lost in the anger. But I'm not dissociating. I'm not pushing it away. There it is. I can feel it, but I'm not controlled by it because I've stepped back into meditative awareness. So in the level 1 practice, I just bring my awareness to my body and feel the anger. I can feel my face is flushed. I can feel my heart pounding. I can feel my breathing is a little shallow, tension in my shoulders. I'm just knowing that I'm feeling those. So the anger is actually supporting me in meditating in that moment. It's supporting the knowing quality of the mind because I'm not lost in the anger. So let's say the anger, even though I'm meditating with it, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, Mingyu Rinpoche says, well, if that's happening, just try something different. Meditate with sound. So I'm meditating. The point right now is I'm meditating. I'm not dealing with the anger. I'm in meditation. I'm doing my practice. So I'm just going to let the anger go, meditate with sound. But hey, what's happening? The anger's coming back. I'm meditating with sound. Anger's coming back, anger's coming back, anger's coming back. Okay, now I need to take a step back. The anger's not going to let go right now. So, let me bring kindness and curiosity. What's underneath the anger? And I can tell you, for me, this may not always be true for you, but it's almost 99%, 100% true for me. There's always fear under my anger. Fear or anxiety. There's something that feels threatened when I get angry. So, okay, I'm angry. Let me look at the fear. Let me begin. Let me see, is there fear under there? Can I bring the fear as my supporter of meditative awareness? So I just let the thoughts, the feelings of the fear come into my mind. And I can tell you, well, I'll give you one example. I was doing this actually in the flow of life. I was really angry at a person who's very important to me. And it was a conversation over money. And I'm sure those of you in relationship have never had a fight about money. But we did. And I was walking to work and I was really angry. And I thought, okay, time to drop into meditative awareness. I can carry this anger with me all day, or I can meditate with the anger and look for the booster. Knowing from many experiences that there's always fear for me underlying the anger, I was like, okay. So my parents grew up during the Great Depression. People didn't have enough money. There was often not enough to eat. I carry their anxiety with me. I realized, wow, I am so afraid I'm going to be homeless. And I'm like, this is completely irrational. I am so far from it. I have a good job. We have money in our bank account. I am way, way far from being homeless. And as soon as I got in touch with that fear and realized how irrational the fear was, the anger just dissolved. It was gone. And I didn't have to do anything except feel and recognize what was feeding the anger. Now, it's not always going to be that easy, right? This is just one example of how bringing kindness and curiosity and meditative awareness to our feelings, our thoughts, our lives as we live them in the world with all of the challenges we face, how transformative this can be in practice.